Captain John Ross, Galactic Command. That's John Ross, Galactic Command. What do I like about John Ross and his crew? I like the characters. These characters all interact with each other very well. And I learned that from my fandom of Star Trek. Star Trek, the original series, to say I was obsessive about it growing up is probably an understatement. But I didn't want this particular series that I'm writing, Galactic Command, to be Star Trek. It's not. It's not. The thing that it has in common with Star Trek is that characters work well together. Voyage 24, they're heading out to the Nebula Planet. They've just ended the Antarian War. And just the beginning of that book, Ross is out absolutely raising hell. He's had all the emotion and the war and the killing. His best friend Craig Duggan died during the Antarian War. He's out there absolutely whooping it up with his first officer, Lindy. Inside the space bar, they get into a brawl, and then they get hauled away by security guards. But what they don't know is they're being brought to a detention center. That detention center is controlled by Admiral Ebert and about 4 or 5 other admirals who have a special mission for Ross. This particular book talks about extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, the reason that I think it's important is because up to this point in Galactic Command, there has been no contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, which seems incredible considering they're out there, it's thousands of years from now, and they haven't discovered any intelligent life. Now, recently, Stephen Hawking had just said we should be careful about sending signals out there. We might not like the result if we have an answer to those signals. There may be a civilization out there that is certainly more powerful than us, and not even demonized or malevolent, or not even out to sadistically destroy the human race. It just may not work out, that's what he's saying. In Voyage 24, there's a side plot going on too. Ross's old friend, Nancy Burke. Nancy Burke is on the vessel. She's a reporter, which is called a viewer bender in that time. She's on board, but she has a fatal illness, and Ross is very disturbed about her dwindling away. The corollary plot is Commander Jack Bragg, a rogue command officer, has gotten into trouble his whole career and somehow has skirted from that trouble and never really been reprimanded. Now he's in the thick of this, and Ross runs into him head on as they head toward the Nebula Planet. The Nebula Planet is hidden for a reason behind the nebula, and they find out that reason very quickly by the discovery on the Nebula Planet. This particular vessel is important too. It's a long, sleek vessel, and Ross explains exactly what's going on with that long neck. It seems to be empty space, but it's really not. It compacts space and moves the ship forward like a slingshot through space. Let's talk about those other characters. The computer is the centralized character. The computer, Polonus, could be the hub of the wheel. Hub of the wheel, Mr. Muldoon. And Muldoon really does not get along with a computer. Muldoon wants a human face, human interaction. And he's always out there saying, tell that thing to shut up, John. Muldoon is always deferring to Ross to take some action and to reprimand the computer for giving him grief. And the computer has human emotions, so it does give, Polonus does give Muldoon a raft of grief whenever it possibly can. I use the word it because it is an it. It may have some attributes of humanity, but it is an it. The security guy is intense. His name is Walter Kruczynski. Kruczynski is out there and he's just focused on what he wants to do. And that's what he does. You don't see him veering from that character very much. He doesn't have much of a range of personality. Ross can go off, and Ross can be philosophical. He can be in that cambium, which is their chamber, where they're able to simulate reality. I didn't steal this from Star Trek Next Generation. This is something that I had as a part of my vessel when I thought this up. But when Ross is out there, he can be philosophical, he can be sentimental, he can look back to his first assignment on Markham and look back at what he lost there, and he lost the love of his life there. Also, but Ross, on the other hand, is hard-nosed and determined, and he's very self-critical. When something happens, he immediately resets everything, tries to find out exactly what he did wrong and how he can make it work better in the future. Buttressing him here is Lindy. Lindy is scientifically very sharp, but he's also like a steering mechanism for John Ross. He gets Ross back in line. He advises him. He'll throw a few tidbits out there so Ross will know exactly what he should be doing rather than his own gut emotion, because Ross is incredibly emotional, and that can get him off the beaten path. Pfeiffer is an interesting character. Pfeiffer is kind of reserved to himself, very much involved in his medical career at the Medevac, which is the ship's sick bay on board ESS-14, Explorer Spaceship 14.
Yeah.
Pfeiffer also is that steering mechanism. Now, when you look back at the original Star Trek series, you had Spock and McCoy doing that same thing. However, these characters are different. First Officer Lindy is hardly Spock, and the ship's doctor is a bit more physical and a bit more dynamic than Dr. McCoy's curmudgeon type of personality. The ship's quarters there's a long neck of the vessel. They get in almost like a tram to get down the other end of the vessel. It has to be that long in order to bend the space to move them forward. One thing Ross has in the back of his head that's probably driving all that emotion is his father. His father was and is an intelligence officer of Galactic Command. He was hardly ever home when Ross was growing up. His father was a rigid, crafty, and almost devious type of individual that Ross still resents. You can hear comments throughout the book where Ross will make some reference to his father, and there are unresolved issues there that will come up in the next book, but that has not been published out here yet. And then there's the usual token characters, like Jim Morris in the Sky Pilot days. Sky Pilot comes from that 1968 song called Sky Pilot, which I always liked that song. Then you have the utility man, Rip. Rip is always just there. He's like a cog. He's like a cam. He's just doing stuff. He's the Rip. What do we have to do? Okay, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do this. John, you have to do this. Rip is always there. And I say utility man, that's exactly what he is. But that's a function because those cams and gears from Rip makes the other characters go and move. The ultimate encounter, I will call it. What happens from that encounter is unanticipated. Like Ross says at the end of the book, he's talking to his friend Keller at a command ceremony, and he says, "It's our own damn fault." In essence, when you have a parochial, a fixed point of view that doesn't allow latitude, then you set yourself up for an encounter that may be cataclysmic to your own purposes and the human race. Galactic Command, Voyage 24.
Chapter 1. He was on a continuous binge for 3 days and did not care who knew about it. After 4.5 years of battle, confined within his ship, fighting occasional battles on 23 planets, and under the constant threat of Antarian attack, John Ross, commander of Explorer Spaceship 14, wanted to push the limits of his physical and emotional stamina. In the murky blue light, he rapidly lost his concentration after the second brumac. Months had passed since he had drunk so heavily and chased women like this. Still, he drifted back to last week's peace treaty ceremonies on the Antarian's home planet. The sole surviving city building's clear green windows reflected Antares 6's rugged mountain peaks and the looming crimson sun. Command engineers had constructed a long pavilion table amidst the rubble. The surrender tables were positioned in a parallel fashion under the blue glow of a newly constructed command sphere, designating the 506 aligned planets. Ross visualized the wispy, white-haired Antarian Surbaks in full dull silver uniform as they marched under heavy guard along the Formcrete. Missing was Serbian Rafik, killed in Ross's final attack at the Marigold star system. Every surviving Surbak must have felt the humiliation of surrendering on their home planet. Seated at the glossy black slab tables, their pale faces wrinkled as the treaty was read. Further compounding the humiliation was Command's decision not only to send the treaty signing across Galactic Command on frequency channels, but throughout the sanctum. The Antarian feelings mattered very little with the war over. Ross realized he was now not trapped behind ESS-14's command consoles, but tucked away in a little pit bar in the mothership's belly. He had remembered this low-lit dungeon pit from a few years ago, when he and Chris Keller, commander of ESS-19, stumbled in here after one of the Antarian battles. It was as if the same blue haze still hung over the tightly packed bar. Lindy, holding the mugs high in the air, moved his large 240-pound frame through the crowd. Ross stood as his second-in-command finally made his way back to the small, round table. John, I swear you need a level 1 security clearance to pass through those idiots out there. I had my pocket picked 3 times, my ass pinched twice, and some barge freighter from Zosma tried to explain how she had some cosmic prevail dust for only 15 marquees. So what's the complaint, Lindy? Ross took the bright blue Brumac to his lips. Not bad for a mothership's beer, but not as rich as the stuff found on the open space trade routes before the war. I told you this place would be a good diversion for us. I can't believe it's actually over. No more fighting. Lindy smacked his lips. They've shipped in this Brumac. I was just thinking that, said Ross, looking around the loud, darkened pit. There are more women here than you want to know about. Half of them are loaded with transmuted ELO viruses. Just what I need. Lindy took in more Brumac. Spend a month in some medevac having my innards snipped by some genetic strand slicer. Ross nodded as he continued to scan the pit. He remembered the tall blonde he had met here with Keller, and how he had never seen her again. He was away from ESS-14 for 3 days back then, until his propulsion engineer, Frank Muldoon, and some third-rank personnel dragged him and Keller out of a docked pleasure ship before the ship left port. He smiled as he thought about the pleasure ship. What are you grinning about? Lindy also looked around the pit. I was just thinking to the last time I was back here on the mothership. Ross stroked his chin-beard stubble. I bet, said Lindy, and both men surveyed the bar. Where do you think they'll send us next, John? Ross raised his finger. He was looking at 2 young women with looped ring ears and raised hair, neatly woven like a fabric. What do you think of raised hair, Lindy? Lindy turned around. I'm not looking at the hair. Neither am I. The women were dressed in silver metallic shorts and were alone. Ross stood and started across the pit. On the prowl. There he goes. Full battle alert. He raised the mug to his lips again. Full battle alert. But as Ross began his move across the bar, 2 younger third ranks appeared, and the raised-haired ladies were escorted away. He turned and looked back at his dark-eyed friend. Que sera, sera. Ross returned to the table. I knew it was too good to be true. He held his Brumac. Where are we going? Where the hell is Everett sending ESS-14? Yeah, that was the question. Lindy, Galactic Command has 506 planets in 4 space sectors. There are 72 motherships, not to mention the outposts, the colony vessels, and the non-aligned planets, as well as the Antarian occupied territory. And you want me to tell you where Ebert is sending us? After 4 years of war, we'll be sent on a vacation. Map space. Visit the non-aligned planets we know little about. We deserve an assignment like that. Those Antarian bastards cost us too many lives. Ross lifted his brumac into the air. May the Antarians never rise from the ashes, nor even try. It all comes down to marquees, Lindy, said Ross, still searching the bar. The Antarians were broke. Everybody needs a benefactor. They'll be back as soon as the coffers are full. No matter what they might have said in the surrender ceremonies, I still don't trust them. John, they were beaten and beaten badly. Even if they were funded, how could they ever bother us again? Their whole planet is in ruins. Fleet in shambles and the settlements occupied. I have it on good authority that Gates wanted to put all their upper command on prison planets, but the group turned up the heat. Thought it might look bad with the non-aligned planets. Gates is the top dog. He heads the command group. Yeah, he's been renominated and elected by the group. But what do you think if he sent the Antarians away for good? Would he still be where he is? I hear you. He's just a puppet, John. If that's all you're saying. Yeah, he saved his own hide instead of doing the right thing. Now he may have to face it all over again. How many lives will be lost because of that decision? Ross looked over his shoulder, and in the blue light saw a short woman with silver hair walk into the bar. She was dressed formally in a green two-piece day suit, and she waved at Ross. That's Nancy Burke. Lindy turned. I knew I'd catch her here. She looks like hell. They stood as she approached the table, computer clipboard for writing in her hand. She had lost weight, and her skin had a pale, matted appearance. Well. I see the schooner sweeps have brought in space junk. Ross gently pecked his old friend on the cheek. Can't keep that viewer bender's clipboard away from you, can you? Asked Lindy as he shook her hand. Have I got a surprise for you, Space Rose? Ross pulled up a chair for her, but remained concerned about her frail appearance. How long has it been, Nancy? He leaned back and crossed his legs. Can I get you a brumac? How are you feeling? Are you all right? One question at a time, Commander. First answer. 15 months, right before he went out to encounter that Antarian who was starting his own little empire. Ah, yeah, Commander Zariak and his defiance of the Antarian command. I thought we had him over on our side, but he headed for deep space. Deep space is not deep enough. That's a story I'd like to bend. It's all wrapped up in a command intelligence file, said Nancy. How'd you find out about Zariak? It was classified. No comment. And to answer your second question, no. And I'm on a damned required diet from my doctor. Anything serious? Asked Lindy. Oh no, just the usual maladies of pushing 50. Our dealings with Zariak, Ross moved closer to her. The Zariak affair is classified. Word leaks out, Commander, now that you're this big battle hero. Ross smiled. That's old news, Nancy, but I know you have political connections, big political connections. Probably why I've been chosen to be on your next voyage. What? A viewer bender on an Explorer spaceship? Something is off frequency with that image, no offense. Lindy laughed and lifted the brumac to his lips. We don't even know where the hell we're going. Something big is up, said Nancy. Big? Ross laughed and looked at Lindy. She might be revealing command voyage orders. The war is finished, the battle's over, there is nothing big left, Nancy. It's important enough for Admiral Gates to personally push me on this voyage. Really? Now you pique my curiosity. We were just saying how easy things are going to be for us now. You sure you want to be on something big? Ross pointed at her, thinking someone had fed her a line about this being a big voyage. She thought for a moment, and her blue eyes brightened. This is just what I need right now, to get away. Nancy, if you have any knowledge of Voyage 19, our dealings with Commander Zariak, you should know that an Explorer spaceship can be a hazardous assignment. I'm well aware of that, but I figure any man who could survive the Antarian War, and as many battles as you were both in, will survive whatever mission Gates orders you on. Orders are orders, John, said Lindy with a big smile. He finished his brumac and wrapped the mug on the wooden table. Yes, Commander, orders are orders, and I have yet to receive any orders. You should be cataloging your career, John. People would be interested. All the planets you have seen before and during the war. That's why we have frequency reports back to command. Ross was still not happy about a civilian being on ESS-14. Nancy smiled and held his hand briefly. Maybe they'll send you in search of non-human intelligent life. With all the planets and settlements recorded, still no contact with the Anchals. Ross studied her blue eyes as she spoke. and was convinced she was hinting ESS-14's new orders involved checking for the Antros. Any member of Galactic Command would have kept such information to himself. Even more than before, he doubted whether bringing a viewer bender on a voyage was a good idea. Lindy spoke in an official voice, the Brumac kicking in. You're referring to intelligent life, independently evolved? Exactly. All the planets. So much independently evolved life abounding, but no Antros. Now, said Lindy, humanity spread out over this portion of the galaxy, and we diverged into such radically different societies. Even the Antarians are an evolved race within the human umbrella. The human umbrella, said Ross, grinning. You ought to use that in your bend, Nancy. Why, is there just one independently evolved intelligent race? Ross's face tightened, and he kept his distance. If you have command voyage information... She smiled, and both men stood with her. Things will be changing sooner than you think, Ross, from Mark of 4. I'll see you both aboard ship. Ross gently squeezed her icy hand and studied her tired eyes. As a friend, I would love to have you aboard. As a commander, I have to protest it. This is a fait accompli, she said. Sorry. Ross faced Lindy as she turned and moved slowly through the bar pit. I don't like this. She'll never get aboard, John. That's the viewer bender in her talking. When does command routinely allow civilians aboard an ESS vessel? Unless they're scientists or assigned personnel like Sebastian. Yeah, but Sebastian's an excellent cook. Ross watched Nancy disappear through the crowd and into the foggy shadows. He shook his head. I'm gonna fight this. You should be able to squelch it. A couple of blondes caught Ross's eye. Lindy looked in the same direction and smiled. Back on course to our primary mission here tonight. Full speed ahead, Lindy.
This is Robert P. Fitton, and I've been zooming far ahead in time to Galactic Command, the Nebula Planet.
Well, Bragg,
Said the white-haired Rafik as he turned. His red eyes had the glow of the enemy, and yet Bragg had to trust him now.
your career has been revitalized.
Bragg stared at the Aurea. How did they do it?
It's always amazed me how you in command would ask such a question. You just take it, you fool.